I promise you, you've never seen an R9 like this one. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. If you don't know what an R9 is, here's a quick recap. The Les Paul was first introduced in the year 1952, looked like this, but by 54 it had transformed into this. Your next big change is in 1956, where you get the introduction of the Tune-o-matic bridge. Then in 57 you still got the gold top finish, but you have the introduction of the now legendary PAF humbuckers. 58 brings in the burst colors, 59 slims up the neck a little bit, and then 1960 makes the necks even slimmer and the color stops fading. So if you've ever wondered what R9 means, R stands for reissue, and then the number after that tells you what year. RO might be a little bit tricky because that's 1960, not 1950, because these things weren't made yet. So now that we're all on the same page here, a 59 reissue normally has a beautifully figured maple top. It's got a mahogany back, it's got a mahogany neck, it's gorgeous, but this thing in this case is not spec traditionally. So why we still call this thing a 59 reissue, I'm not sure, but wait until you guys see this. I love it. It's so weird. This is an oak top 59 reissue. Now, is this based off of one 59 reissue that just happened to have an oak top? Not that I'm aware of. Gibson was just feeling particularly quirky that day. But what if I told you the fun does not end there? It's not only an oak top, it's a Korina back and neck. What a freak of a monstrosity. It is so bizarrely weird, but I just love it because it's also a figured oak top. So you got a little bit of flame figuring underneath all of this cool wood grain. So let's do a little bit of history to see if we can understand this better. Korina is a sacred tone wood within Gibson's lore. They used it on the original Flying V and Explorers done up around 1958. But outside of those two models, Gibson really didn't use Korina all that often, and they typically only get it in around anniversary years. For example, the 50th anniversary of the V and Explorer. They had a very nice Korina V, very nice Korina Explorer, and then this weird Les Paul Futura hybrid 5 weird dumb thing that they called the Tribute. I hate it, but yet I still need to document it one day. So those guys were done up in 2008, which is the exact year that this guitar was also created. So is it part of the 50th anniversary run? Not necessarily. It's mainly because it was just one of those Korina years. They probably had some that they could use on other stuff that wasn't a weird Forted stock. So they made a handful of them with oak tops, but that's not the only exotic top that you can find. There are also a few Koa top versions made that also have the Korina body. Now, does that mean a maple top doesn't exist? Well, it's very possible, because 10 years prior to this, in 1998, they also made some of these. Again, it was an anniversary year. If you want to hear how a maple top version sounds, I documented one in this episode. But that late 90s, early 2000s was another period where Korina was made. You could check out my Flying VK, which is a 67 Flying V, which is normally mahogany, that was made out of Korina. Joe Bonamassa had Gibson whip up a couple of lap steel looking guitar prototypes. So since the late 90s, about every 10 years, they bring it back into production. 2023 is currently an in-production year for Gibson. They've been cranking those out quite a bit, but they cost 10 grand, brand new. So if you're seeing this and you really want an oak top Les Paul, you're in luck. There was a different run done in 2018. Now that was not an R9 though. It was a custom shop modern Les Paul figured. So it doesn't have the Korina body and neck either, but that's pretty much the only other time I've seen this. Now, very unfortunately, the original case for this guitar got misplaced, and that had the COA and everything else in it, so I don't have any case candy necessarily to share with you, but if you're wondering why it had a Gibson USA case, that's why. So, first impressions, it's a very light-colored guitar, but yet you get some dark smokiness here on the top. It's got the 9 leading serial number, but honestly, this feels more like an R8 or an R7's neck, because it's like really big and chunky. How is an oak top with a Korina body going to sound? I guess we'll just have to figure that out together here as we throw this thing on the workbench to take an individual look at its parts and specs and then get to that playing demo. I think it's safe to say that this one cleaned up beautifully, nice and shiny now. Let's check out what our pickups are in here. Our neck pickup is a Birchbucker 1, bound by PS, which stands for Fan Sari, an employee at Gibson, and it was dated to 7/14 of 08. And our bridge pickup Bucker 2 wound by the same person a little bit later in the year. But as far as the cavities themselves, we can see a long neck tenon in our neck position, and nothing too exciting in our bridge except for some old buffing compound. The cross-section is pretty interesting though, because the oak in Korina has a very similar color when it doesn't have finish applied to it. But you can see your two-piece oak top joining onto the Korina body. And here's where the neck joins to the body. That's a maple block that caps off your truss rod channel. Then you can see the neck Korina wood joining into the Korina body and our oak top again. But our Buckers read 8K ohms in the bridge, 7.61 in the neck, and just for fun, 3.9 in the middle. As far as our hardware, it is a historically mounted ABR1, has the wire retainer and the branding as such. And then we've got the lightweight aluminum tailpiece, that is original. We've just got our regular controls over here, 2 volumes, 2 tones, 1 set for each pickup. And as is pretty common, you've got some internal cracking within your knobs, but thankfully they stay on. We do have a few small dings right here in the top. I also saw a few of them over here in the cutaway. You got a small ding right here in the binding and like some green discoloration as well. But it's great that they didn't put a pick guard on this at all, so you don't have any holes in the top and you can just really appreciate this wood grain. The dark staining within the rings looks really good in my opinion. But I would assume an oak top really appeals to somebody who likes plain tops, but as I was telling you earlier, it's got the flame figuring underneath it. You just have to catch it in the angle just right, and now that it's been polished, it definitely dances a little bit better. Because I'd always just assumed that there would be no flame figuring to this particular one, and I was kind of sad because I had just missed out on like one of the 2018 versions. But then I was happy when this thing showed up. But moving on from the body, we've got our Korina neck with a rosewood fretboard. That's like the only other thing that would have made this even cooler is if it was like a Brazilian board. Got our historic style trapezoid inlays with some very nice wood grain, and the frets only show a little bit of wear. Nothing you'll have to worry about for quite some time. But we've got that standard 12-inch fretboard radius, typical 24 3/4-inch scale length, with a nut width of 1.7 inches, which increases to 2.07 by the 12th. First fret neck depth 0.92, and 1.3 by the 12th. Here's that neck profile at the contour gauge, 1st fret and 12th fret, nice big rounded C. It's definitely a very chunky neck for an R9, but a historic spec here are the tortoiseshell colored side marker inlays. They're a reddish hue, which is very obvious on this example. Here's what our truss rod cover looks like. It's the historic wide beveled edge version. And here's what our truss rod's looking like. A little bit of thread past the top. For some reason, some custom shop guitars ship like that. It could also mean that it's been adjusted. It's got plenty of life left though. Just very important to note that when you're selling a guitar. Because once you have about a 1/2 inch showing, that's when you should say it's limited adjustability. But everything's actually pretty clean here. There are some light string change scratches, but after polishing it, it seemed to remove most of them. There is a ding right here on the corner. It looks like somebody might have tried to touch that up, because it looks a little bit goofy from the edge. Moving on to the back now, let's take a look at our control cavity. Everything's looking bone stock to me. You've got your regular 50 style wiring with bumblebee caps, and the pots that they were using in this particular era. No solder joints touched. However, I did find it interesting that there's not an R9 over here, although I'm not actually familiar with when they started doing that. Some interesting dark streaks within the wood grain right here though. You can see somewhere they routed out the output jack too. And just nice wavy wood grain under here. There's a small ding right here as well. But you've got your original plastic output jack plate, and our strap buttons are in our usual locations. So over here you've got lots of scratches and a couple of impressions. Probably from somebody's strap would be my guess. So it's not perfect here. And then there's like a long run of dings back here. Again, probably like a studded strap or something that it laid on. However, most viewing angles you really don't see that, but that's just some awesome wood grain. It's got a nice chatoyant effect to it as well. Now this does have thin binding in the cutaway. The oak has a very similar color to the Korina, so you'd barely see it poking out through there. You gotta be knowing to look for that. But nice wavy wood grain along the edge. Reminds me of like the sand dunes or something. Nice wavy grain. Running up the backside of the neck, pretty much similar to the rest. There is a very tiny ding right here on the neck though. And you got some light figuring within the neck as well. No breaks, cracks, or repairs to speak of. Gibson Deluxe tuners, and then our serial number with an interesting like bird's eye figuring right above it. So this number can mean a whole lot of different things. It could mean it's a real 1959, it could mean it's a 1989 prehistoric, it could mean it's a 2008, it could mean it's a 2018. how do you know? You gotta look for context clues. For example, the wiring style, if there's any dates on the pickup, which helped us in this case. You wanna look at what kind of case it actually came in. You could also look at what kind of case and COA it came with, as well as various other specs. Sometimes it's a little bit of a puzzle. All said and done, 9 pounds, 11.6 ounces. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how this unique combination sounds. So far, I'm not going to say I hear a huge tonal difference. It sure does look cool. Let's try some distorted tones now. Say it has a little bit more biting attack to it. Got really great sustain to it as well. Got a nice raunchiness to it in that neck position. Now that we know about the flamed oak top R9 with the Korina body, what are my final thoughts on this thing? I didn't notice too many differences in the clean department, but once you threw some distortion on, this thing really came to life. Now, I'm not sure if it's just this particular example or if these wood combinations help give you those better tones. All I can say is this particular example was a lot of fun. It's unique. It's not traditional in the slightest, but that's kind of what makes it fun because it's still based within Gibson history with the Korina bodies. It's just borrowing it on a Les Paul shape and taking oak kind of out of left field, but you know, it's different. This is probably not everyone's first choice, but for somebody who has a few different Les Pauls in their collection and now they're looking for something a little bit different, this is a great choice because you still get the flame top, you get unique wood grain, wood combinations that aren't used every day on this body shape. I had a lot of fun with this thing. I'm tempted to keep it for myself, but I think I'm going to put it up for sale, so you can find it on my website, troglysguitarshow.com. All right, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will catch you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, consider subscribing. I post videos like this every day, and you might even enjoy this next one.